is up, Starlings? Welcome back to a brand new review and breakdown for Stargirl. Now, this is for episode 7, titled Shiv Part 1. And of course, that means that this is basically a two-parter story. And wow, I don't mean to sound cliche with these reviews, but I really enjoyed this episode, mainly from that fight at the end. But it was also great to get to see this other side to Cindy, you know, of which I've been teasing for quite, well, since the beginning of this show, just so I didn't spoil it as to who her identity is from the comics, who her father is, and all of that stuff, even though we got quite a bit of clarity on that in recent episodes. But honestly, this episode, that fight at the end, I'll rave about that later, but I had to just instantly get that out of my system because wow, like, it's really impressive stuff. But yeah, this episode was also good in quite a few other ways in terms of the Justice Society of America training, even though that didn't end out too successful. We, of course, had Henry King Jr. really coming into his powers. I know they've been emphasizing that for quite a few episodes now, but now it really was embraced in this episode. And yeah, there's a bunch of other things, but without premising it too much, let's get into the review. But I'd really appreciate it if you guys would take 2 seconds of your time to like this video, you know, not only to support the channel, but also to just show your general hype for this episode. And of course, let me know all of your thoughts and opinions and just theories even down in the comments below. And if you want to talk about Stargirl with me even further, I do have a Discord community. I've got to know many of you there. The community is great, if I do say so myself. So invite link to all of that stuff, and my Twitter and other things you can follow me on is, as always, in the video description down below. So the very beginning of this episode was a really fun introduction. Like, we're what, 7 episodes in now to Stargirl, and we had all of the new Justice Society of America heroes kind of just really loving their new lives. You know, we had Courtney saying good morning to the staff. We had Yolanda training and basically hugging Wildcat's, you know, freaking cow. We had Rick carving, I believe it was like an hourglass into the tree. And then we had Beth, of course, being Beth in karaoke mode with Chuck, you know, wearing obviously Dr. Midnight's goggles. Everyone just essentially embracing their new paths. Even, you know, Beth has got to the point where she wasn't preparing her parents' meals, which they actually expected. So I think they're starting to realize there's a change in their daughter as well. We had more excuses with Mike, which, you know, has been going on for quite a while. This brings me into quite a few things in this episode, which I'll mention a little bit later. But essentially, this moment was brought up because Pat and Courtney were talking about training and he overheard it. I really think that, you know, at least out of Barbara and Mike not knowing about obviously the JSA stuff going on, you'd have to think one of them is going to find out something significant fairly soon. And I think given the amount of scenes Mike had in this episode and that moment he had with Courtney later on, it could very well be him. And then we had Henry King Jr. with his father. I swear Henry has just been, like, you know, tripping out with his powers for multiple episodes in a row now, but this episode in particular really essentially got his brainwave powers into fruition. So he was with his father. Cindy walks in and he even said, I feel like I can wake him up, like I can will it to happen. So that may very well actually happen, and that could have been a foreshadowing moment. Cindy in this moment in the episode was just being ridiculously fake, like obviously trying to support Henry King Jr., being there for him and his dad, but really just hating it at the same time. And obviously this whole episode and next episode is Shiv Part 1 and, you know, Part 2. So this very much highlighted Cindy's character and her very, I don't know, like narcissistic, bitchy kind of ways, the kind of ways that we all don't really like her. And that was also symbolized through even her friends and multiple people calling her out to be a bit of a bitch this episode, so to speak. But that's obviously very deliberately so. We're not really meant to get on with that character as an audience very well. But what I really liked, you know, in the back half of this episode is I really like the Shiv side of her. That was freaking awesome, freaking cool, and I really can't wait to talk about that later. And speaking about Cindy, of course, we got even more context as to a bit of her past in that moment where we had the new JSA walking down the high school corridor with that little, I don't know, theme song in the background. I can't remember what it was, but it was just kind of like this new established group in high school, since they're kind of all friends now, all kind of hanging around together. And Cindy, of course, just barges into them. That's when obviously Beth Chapel was discussing her mum dying and how she used to be a nice kid, but in that moment from there on out, she became the scariest kid, this horrible person. And obviously, we know a bit about this anyway. We get more clarification on this from Dragon King himself later on. We've had little teasers of this in previous episodes and how he's been working on his daughter. But if you know a little bit about, you know, Cindy's backstory, even from the comic side of it, like, it really is a brutal upbringing, all the kind of experiments that she was subjected to by her father. Like, you kind of understand how she's become this kind of cruel exterior of a person. And there may be a bit of a glint of, I don't know, light within her. And we kind of saw that a little bit with her and Stargirl, or should I say Courtney, in that science class. But really, my point is, you really wouldn't be surprised the way she turned out with what she's had to endure. And she really is a product of what she's been through. We had that moment where Cindy just bumped into Justin the janitor, and we got some real big teasers as to his identity. We had those horses in his kind of janitor closet there. We even had his freaking sword, which was awesome, and that definitely swings into action later. Okay, I'm sorry for that one, but I had to go there. I think with the increasing focus on Justin's character, you'd have to think that his actual identity will be revealed fairly soon, especially as he's familiar with Stripesy, with that moment at the end, but talk about that more later on. But back to Henry, this part of the episode was really cool because his powers really started blossoming, and to the point where it looked like he was getting a bit of a handle on it instead of it going out of control. So initially we saw this through him hearing Cindy say his name, and it just was really loud, but then he actually had a little 45-minute test in class where he was, you know, quite struggling initially, but then he started hearing what the students were saying about the test as well as their answers. So, like, you know, with Henry's powers in school, you know, I think any of us would be tempted to kind of whiz in school by listening to, you know, the smartest kids' answers. So that is exactly what he did. And yeah, I think he's gonna be realizing that there is really a whole lot more to his powers and where they came from than what he first realized. But as I said, we actually had Courtney kind of connect with Cindy in class. I suppose Cindy was a little bit more willing after her friend actually called her a bitch. So I guess she wanted somebody to kind of hang out with. And yeah, Stargirl pointed out that she hadn't had to look at directions once for mixing those chemicals to get that kind of chemical result. But due to her dad being a chemist, she went on to say that she did science experiments for fun. But while that was, you know, a kind of offhand funny comment, or it was meant to be kind of perceived that way, really there's kind of a lot of darkness behind that statement she said, because yeah, she did science experiments for fun, but was it really fun? No, she was subjected to some real dark experiments, which obviously, as you saw later on in the episode, gave her the ability for her retractable blades, her kind of healing that you saw when Stargirl freaking fried her face, just all of these things. And as I said, you know, you wouldn't necessarily come out the most sanest and nice person after living and growing up with a dad who kind of likes to subject you to science experiments for fun. So after she invited Courtney to hang out on Saturday night, which happened to be the night of the homecoming dance, we then saw Cindy go to her house, and you really saw the way she treated her stepmom, to the point where her stepmom was absolutely terrified of Cindy. This was actually pretty telling of, you know, somebody who really gets to see Cindy all of the time in her true nature. Like, she doesn't really have to hide anything behind closed doors at home. This is where she goes to visit her father unannounced. The door has that kind of coded lock on it, but she kind of bypasses it, and it turns out that her freaking house is connected to the Injustice Society lair. I mean, we even had her saying, "Stop growling at me," to Solomon Grundy or something like that. So in this episode, I'm just going to cut to it now, because we saw Courtney obviously see Principal Bowen, obviously the new fiddler, go to the Injustice Society lair from the freaking principal's office later. So like, that Injustice Society lair is connected to like everywhere in Blue Valley, I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it's connected to Sportsmaster's gym. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, well, we already know it's connected to Icicle's place of work, where of course Courtney's mother works, and honestly, I reckon it's just underground, this underground big ass network all over Blue Valley, and that's really cool in a way. I found that like a proper, you know, especially old-fashioned kind of villainous organization kind of thing to have, and I don't know, just found it really cool. But this is where we had Cindy eavesdropping on Sportsmaster saying how he hit Hourman with the 3 baseballs to the gambler. Essentially, this whole meeting was the ISA wondering who the new JSA are. Sportsmaster was quite adamant that they are kids. And, you know, even one of them, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Tigress, was saying that we should bring our children into this. You know, they could help us find them, but, you know, they didn't necessarily want to do that, you know, especially with some of them, like Icicle's kid being kept out of this light. I'm not sure how much Artemis Croc knows, but it seemed that Sportsmaster and Tigress tried to keep things from her last episode when they said they were going out, and really they were going out to fight Hourman in the new JSA, or should I just say protect what the gambler was doing through hacking last episode. So it seems that Sportsmaster and Tigress seem to shield Artemis Croc, and even Dragon King said later on in the episode that, you know, it's for the best keeping the other kids out of it. But to be honest, I really wouldn't be surprised if that's more of an instruction from Icicle. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, he's the one heading all of that kind of rule, keeping the kids out of it, because I'm sure he wants to keep his son out of all of this. And that's when we cut to the scene of Cindy following her father, Dragon King, to this new area we haven't seen before. Well, we've seen it in the trailers, and actually a big fight is going to go down in this area, and it seems to be connected to that whole underground Injustice Society network. Cindy essentially is having a tantrum, doesn't want to be a teenager anymore. She literally gets out her Shiv blade, her retractable blade, from her wrist and kills one of Dragon King's workers, and she wants a seat at the table of the Injustice Society of America. And I don't know, this was pretty cool, because I was wondering where that was actually going to go, but her father was pretty adamant that, you know, he only gave her powers to protect her, not enhance her tantrums. He refers to her as his greatest experiment. Ultimately, I really enjoyed this scene. She really is kind of like a daddy's kind of girl tantrum. Like, she didn't care what she was doing, killing his workers. Love the suit on the wall. Love the dragon-headed staff that she was using. I mean, well, she uses it later on. We actually also got a little tease of Dragon King saying that if Brainwave doesn't wake up, we need Henry's telepathic abilities for my machine. And I was actually commenting on this in a previous breakdown and how that could be the case. And it turns out that this probably will be the case. Now that they've kind of referenced that a couple of times, I think Henry will be the key to that, which makes me think, when will his father wake up? Will he wake up, and will he just communicate with him when he's in a coma, and maybe his father will explain his abilities instead of actually waking up? We're going to have to wait and see. And we're going to have to also wait and see what side Henry lands on, because will he actually help the Injustice Society of America fulfill their Project New America plan, which obviously has to use brainwave kind of powers to activate Dragon King's machine? I mean, you could see it going either way. I think it might go the dark way, just because, of course, if he finds out that Courtney Whitmore put his father in a coma, and we know he's been very upset about that, he might give in to the dark side. But on the other side of things, which actually paralleled these scenes, which felt kind of random, but I get why they did it at the same time, but I don't know, it felt kind of weird. But anyway, we had the Justice Society training at Pat's garage. They still didn't really know how to work together as a team, which is very true. That was kind of demonstrated last episode, and that's what made the original Justice Society so special. And Pat points out something I point out every breakdown, kind of how strange this is that a bunch of kids are going to obviously defeat the ISA and the original JSA couldn't, because he says even with all of that skill and talent, they still weren't able to survive, which, you know, really makes me think, how are they going to do it? But hey, you know, I guess this is the point of the show. We had a little breakdown of the Injustice Society of America, because, you know, of course, Courtney knows quite a bit about this, but the others definitely don't know much about anything at all. So it seems that the OG Fiddler is in jail just through his mugshot there being on that little whiteboard. He dropped a teaser of Sportsmaster first appeared on the scene a few decades ago battling against Wildcat and Green Lantern. Ultimately, this ended with Courtney just deciding to take out the Injustice Society kind of dummies, and this seemed like a bit of a show-off, but I don't think that was actually Courtney's intentions. I think she's just really saying, hey, I'm ready, let's impulsively go. But the whole point is that they're meant to be working as a team, and the other members were a bit kind of disappointed in Courtney that she just, you know, took that all from them. It would have been cool to see them all train. I'm sure we're going to see something more about that. But the main gist of this moment is to kind of teach Courtney and the others that rushing to confront them again is going to be way too risky. I mean, they got their asses handed to them last episode, but hey, she kind of goes ahead and does that anyway in this episode, and it doesn't really end so well for Courtney. Either way, we had some other stuff with Courtney's mother and Icicle. He was looking at that picture of someone, and he wants her to secure a sewing machine factory that, you know, they can buy, and she's now kind of leaving in this episode, leaving the house to just Pat, Mike, and Courtney. Now, this leads me to another interesting thing to talk about, which is kind of related, and you'll see how in a few seconds. So it jumps to Icicle and his son, Cameron, talking about a girl that he would like to go to a homecoming dance with, which I don't know about you guys, but it was very obvious that it was Courtney from the get-go. And Icicle was saying that, you know, with his wife, he killed the other man pursuing her. It was meant to be put off as a joke, but I think we can all understand that it probably wasn't. Either way, it kind of makes me think, you know, obviously we had Cameron ask Courtney to the dance this episode in the next following scenes, but does anyone pick up this kind of vibe from Icicle and Courtney's mother? I don't think Courtney's mother is really thinking anything like that, but I swear there's this maybe slight vibe from Icicle kind of having a few keen eyes on Courtney's mum. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'm looking too into it, but now we have Icicle's son potentially getting romantic, potentially with Courtney. It's very interesting to think that maybe Icicle could have an eye for Barbara. We had Mike also saying, you know, he's my dad, not yours, Dad, and I guess he's feeling really left out considering how much time Pat and Courtney are spending with each other to do with JSA business. And this is what I meant right at the beginning of this breakdown. I think Mike's going to be the one to find out, and Courtney's mother, Barbara, is going to be left in the dark. Then again, though, if I feel like if Mike finds out about all of this, they're going to have to bring him into the fold in a lot more scenes, because I can't imagine if, you know, a stepbrother or whatever finds out about superhero business. I mean, he would want to be involved in that. And so I really don't know where they're going to go with this, but I don't think they can keep it from the rest of the family forever. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Now, after Courtney was asked by Cameron to go to the homecoming dance, she tells Cindy that she can no longer hang out with her on that same night that happened to be on the dance, which puts Cindy into a bit of a tantrum of a mood, and that is when she decides to go back down to the Injustice Society lair and kind of demand and have another tantrum in front of her father. And this is all going on at the same time of when Courtney is following the new fiddler, which we spoke about earlier, into the principal's office, where she goes and opens up a secret door to the ISA HQ. Yet again, it's freaking everywhere, the little secret doors to the ISA. I wouldn't be surprised if there's one in freaking Pat's garage that he doesn't even know about. Also, I love and appreciate that little scene between Sportsmaster and Pat at the game. I feel like it's just hilarious that these two don't know about each other yet. There's some kind of relationship there. Like, obviously Sportsmaster wants, you know, the kind of best for Pat and get him ripped and in the gym more, and Pat is just like, I don't know, I guess he doesn't mind him, but he's just like, you know, this guy. But it really, it's more about if only these two knew who each other were, it would be very interesting. And I hope later on, if they do find out each other's identities, they'll continue the kind of jokes that they're keeping up here. But this is when Cindy suits up after seeing Stargirl, I believe, on the CCTV. And yeah, this is where everything was going down. And I honestly did think it was like borderline, you know, suicide of Stargirl walking right into the ISA HQ, even though it turned out that she just opened another secret door to the lockers, so they really are freaking everywhere. But she could have been walking right into the heart of it, and it just shows you how impulsive and how Pat is right in warning everything he is, you know, telling the kids about with how dangerous this is. But anyway, I just absolutely loved this fight. Like, I'm not going to go and say, like, it was the most spectacular fight scene in the whole world, but, like, I was just so impressed. I expected some kind of scrap between Shiv or Cindy, whatever you want to say, and Stargirl, but, like, this was so much more cinematically impressive. The cinematography was great. The choreography was great. And often when there's a lot of wire work like this in shows, you can kind of tell quite blatantly that they're being yanked by a wire. The speed that they're getting thrown away without kind of descending to the ground, you know, is blatantly a wire, you know, that they're being pulled on. But this was just done so well. There was a whole bunch of it, like when Courtney was just propelling herself off the staff with her legs and launching forward. Just so many little moments like that were done very, very, very impressively. Another thing I really liked in that fight was that 360 circling moment from the camera around Courtney and Cindy fighting in the center of the room. All of this was so freaking impressive. I'm sure you will agree, but I think this was, I can't even remember off the top of my head now what we have seen with fights. Obviously, we had Brainwave and a couple of other moments, and Icicle kind of, but like this was definitely the best one so far. At least in my mind from a cinematic perspective and a choreography perspective. I know the Sportsmaster one was cool last episode, but this, I don't know. There's something about it that was just, it was ongoing. I know we had a long one last episode, but this was just done in such a way that it took me by surprise. Yet again, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, DC Universe, they shoot great shows, and their costume designs are always on point. I think this costume for Shiv looks absolutely incredible. Loved seeing the dragon-headed staff in action, and, you know, it's very accurate to what it does in the comics. You know, it disperses flames like a freaking flamethrower. So it was just great. All of it was great. You know, even that moment that I mentioned earlier where she got burned, it was just crazy. If that was anyone else, Courtney would have literally just kind of killed them. They would have died there and then. But obviously she has that kind of ability to heal. But luckily, everyone, Justin, the janitor, arrives with the sword and saves the day, except Courtney is absolutely battered, like really battered, because, you know, Pat comes running into the room, which I had a little bit of an issue with. I really did, and this could have actually, we didn't really find out if this exposed her identity, but Pat comes running into the room shouting Courtney, as Cindy is literally still there, kind of like scrambling away, so there's no way she wouldn't have heard Courtney. Yet I'm just interested to know in the show moving forward if she's going to now take that information to the ISA and say, I know who Stargirl is, it is Courtney Whitmore. But we don't know if she actually heard it or not. She should have, but the show just might ignore that. But we're going to have to wait and see. But hey, if this has taught Courtney anything, I hope it is that, as Pat is absolutely right, she walked right into this all by herself without a team, and she got absolutely screwed. I'm really actually happy that Cindy had the advantage in that fight. She is obviously a lot more experienced. She is a lot more, well, she's known about her father and the ISA and everything like that a lot more than what Stargirl has ever been into this kind of, you know, superhero mythical business, if you will. So yeah, really enjoyed this ending to the episode. Part 2, this is part 1 to part 2, so it's going to continue on very seamlessly, I assume, from this moment. And overall, that was the episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think you can all guess my favorite moment was the very impressive cinematic fight scene at the end. I'm just really enjoying Stargirl. We're getting much deeper into it now. 7 episodes in. I'm really looking forward to the part 2 of this. And yeah, Stargirl is once again giving us another decent episode, and I would love to hear all of your thoughts on it down in the comments below, guys. As I said, I read every single one of your comments. I can't reply to every one of them, but I do read them all, and it would be great to see some more of you in my Discord server. As I said, links to all of that is in my description. If you have a Twitter account, follow me there, Instagram, and if you want to support the channel even more, guys, it would be greatly appreciated if you left a like on this video, and if you want to go further and beyond that, you can click the join button for this channel, get a membership for the channel, but also I do have a Patreon. Maybe consider pledging to that to help support the channel even more. But that is everything, everyone, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you starlings in the next video. Goodbye.